As a reminder, we're recording tonight for posting on the community access forums. And secondly, happy anniversary, 2 years.
You're kidding.
2 years.
Fun's just begun.
Yeah, that's right. Told you it was gonna be a long haul, so.
2 years closer to the end.
2 years, as of June 13th, 2 years.
With the whole committee? No.
Yes,
Really?
Been 2 years.
yes.
Oh, where did it go? Oh, man. Okay.
We have a lot to show for it.
Yeah, I guess so. I just don't feel any older.
All right, first order of business is to approve the minutes of the June 10th meeting.
Move. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So voted. And thank you again, Debbie, appreciate it. Financial update. John, I assume?
Sure, yeah. Financial update, just our standard 2 invoices from HMFH and for PMA. These are both for the month of May.
So again, the standard invoices, nothing unusual there. Kathy's not here, but she would have alerted me if she was seeing any red flags. So, motion to accept the financial update.
Move.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So voted. Thank you. Laurie?
So, I'll have to hold this. So we are, on June 24th, our third schematic design meeting. You've seen the agenda. I just want to touch base on the items on the right-hand side. We've had a number of meetings since the last time you saw us, both with a few times with the school administration. We actually have a standing meeting happening every other Tuesday in the AM. And then we also had an informal conversation with the planning board.
Yeah, specifically the
Please.
Hugh Hurley, the chair, and Tracy Aldrich, the town planner, just those two participated in that. But it
Yeah.
was an informal orientation on the project. First time we've touched base with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
And similarly, we had another informal with the Concom agent. I had a conversation regarding the site. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Last day of school happened. Cheers for all you educators. And we did have the MSBA board meeting, which approved our submission, our PSR submission, your selections, your decisions, and have green-lighted us to move into schematic design. Good thing, since we did, but that's common procedure. We would have known long before if we weren't on the right track.
So again, that's a significant milestone for us in terms of getting that MSBA board approval. So again, congratulations to the whole team, committee and team members, so really appreciate that.
And also on June 18th, we had a community forum. A number of you joined us. I think we had, I don't know, I counted at the time, now I forgot, about 15, 16 people with us. Where we, again, we didn't show them anything that you haven't all seen, but just to get everyone up to date of the decisions making and the K-6 school design and all of that. So we might talk a little bit more about that after. But the agenda is in yellow. We'll have an overview of general contractor versus construction manager at risk, 2 different methodologies for how you procure the school building project. We'll do a high-level recap of the sustainability workshop that we had on June 10th. And then some really fun stuff, interior design. We think is fun stuff. We hope you'll think so. Upcoming meetings that we all will be here, and we are on the CM versus CMR, GC and CMR.
All right. Okay.
Do you need it?
Sure, yeah, that'd be great. So general contractor versus CMR discussions, we're not going to vote on anything tonight. I think the plan would be to take a vote for the delivery method sometime in September, we get that meeting, but talking with the chair and the design team, we thought it was important that early on, just to let people understand that there are 2 different delivery methods that you can use for this project, and try to start thinking about what they are and early on, so that when we get to that September vote and we have some more conversations, if there's questions and things like that, we can answer all of those before we run up to that vote, because we really want to make sure everyone has a good understanding of what the delivery methods are. So the two that we're considering for here are general contractor and construction manager at risk. All of these use the filed subbid process through Chapter 149 and 149A. And the way it works from the general contractor side is we're going to advertise for bids and put an ad in the paper, put out advertisement there, and there's going to be, that goes out to bid. We're going to pre-qualify subcontractors. We're going to pre-qualify general contractors in this case. And then we're going to wait a couple weeks and we're going to accept bids from all of the subcontractors. We take all those prices, all the bids that we receive, we advertise those out to everybody, anyone who wants to see them. And the general contractors will then use those bids along with their own craft trades that they're going to, they're going to buy out and create an entire package. And they're going to bid on a price for the entire project. That's how that's kind of a standard general contractor, that's the way it works. So on a CM, you don't do that. You hire a CM earlier on using a qualifications-based process. You bring them on during design. They're going to aid in design, and then at some point during that process, we're going to start buying out trade contractors, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And the trade contractors are bid out the same way. Those go out to public bid. We advertise those. We collect those, and then the construction manager brings those trades on as their subs, and then they also bring in the rest of the subs throughout the entire contracting period. So they're very different in the way they procure them, where the general contractor is, everything goes out and it's a closed envelope, you open it up and that's the project. Where the construction manager is, they start early, aid you in design, and they bring on trades and build up to a guaranteed maximum price. So that's the general idea of how these work. We're going to go through kind of some pros and cons of each of them, and just to tell you, what are the pitfalls and what are the advantages to each of them, so you can just start understanding of why you would do one method or the other. And then as we continue this process of design of this project, maybe you can come to an opinion on which method you think is better for this project. So again, so the 149 design bid build is a traditional design where the architect completes 100% of the drawings typically before soliciting trade bids, and the lowest responsive and pre-qualified bidders award the contract. With the 149, they'll complete the design, but they'll also solicit some early work packages, which means and we'll go into this a little bit more, you can buy out some of the trades earlier on and get yourself a little bit of a jump on the construction of the project before they complete 100% of all the details of all the drawings. All right, so how do I click? Is it down or?
You did, I think you.
Okay, there we go. All right.
It's,
Early packages. Okay, so we talked a little about early packages. You good? Okay. So our early packages is an advantage to one of the construction manager at risk. They can buy out any package at any time during the project. If it's a filed subbid, there's 19 categories of filed subbids. Those are your MEPs, flooring, ceilings, windows, roofing, things like that. Those have to be bid out through a public procurement process, but the ones that are non-filed subbids, the construction manager bids those out. They're public to us, but not public to the general public. They'll go to a couple different contractors. They'll solicit prices for those things and then procure them. And it allows them to go out and get road work early, utilities early. They can bid out concrete foundations early. They can bid out steel early, which can provide some schedule savings. So when we start looking at the schedule and how this project lines up, we're going to introduce the potentials for early packages and show how a CM schedule stacks up against a GC schedule, where they can start procuring those bits and pieces early. From the GC side, there is a limited amount of early procurement you can do. Typically flat work. You could do road work, you could do utilities, you could do your septic. And the only disadvantage to that really is that when you bid out those early packages under 149, it's almost guaranteed that you're not going to get the same contractor, because the people who are going to bid the vertical contract construction to build your school are not going to be the same people that would do your road work or your flat work and things like that. So you end up with two separate prime contractors, which may introduce a little bit of risk into the project. So just something to be aware of, where the CM you're going to buy out all of the trades through the same construction manager, and they're going to own all of those sub-trades under one envelope and under one contractor. And also, if anyone has any questions as we go along, please feel free to jump in. All right. So just a high level kind of look at the CMR versus GMP. Well, the one thing in 149 is that if you want to do a CMR, you have to be over $5 million. This project will be over $5 million, so there's no issue there. As far as difficulty goes, generally speaking, Chapter 149 are for fairly straightforward projects with limited phasing, less complicated logistics, and CM at risk would bring on for projects with very complicated phasing and major logistic issues, because you can bring them on early on and they can help you phase the project and can help you with some of the logistical challenges. For design bid build, it favors the lowest qualified bidder, so meaning the bidder with the lowest price. Whereas CM favors the most qualified contractor as determined by the selection committee. You will interview and choose who you want as your construction manager regardless of price, so it's not a price-based selection.
So, Sean, so you mean you actually don't, when you make your selection before you know what they tell you the price?
Correct,
It's gonna
yeah.
be.
Yeah, it's- you don't-
Not they give you the prices and you don't have to take the loan.
You will get in a sealed envelope as part of their submission a fee for them to do it, but it's not a negotiation where you can't really look at all their fees and say, okay, they're the lowest CM, we should go with them. You really rank them, and then you look at their fee and then determine if their fee is within reason for what you would expect a construction manager fee, which we have a lot of data that can help certainly support that. But it is a qualification-based process. CMs are not competing on price against each other, generally speaking.
When you open up, excuse me, when you open up the envelope based on price, after you've selected the most responsible and qualified bidder, you can negotiate that price, or that's fixed at that point?
You can negotiate certain aspects of that, but you cannot, I do not believe you can negotiate their fee. So if they come in at a percentage fee, that I believe that's a fixed portion. A lot of it you can negotiate with. You do not have to award before you open the price envelope, but it's just to say that you can't, it's not, price is not a
It's not
consideration.
part of the criteria.
It's not a correct, yes. And then one of the pros of the 149 and is just the cost. We typically see CM projects costing anywhere from 5 to 10% more. You're paying them to be in there early. You're paying for some other items in there, but we can talk about a little bit of how they're covering some added costs within that 5 to 10% as well. So it's kind of hard to determine exactly how much more a CM would be, because you're never bidding two projects. You're never bidding two identical projects against each other. You don't open a GC bid and a CM bid and then compare and see where you're at. So it does get a little bit hard to determine what is the actual increased price for the CM, which is why we typically present it as a range.
Sean, that selection committee is just a subgroup of us. It's not
For CM, yes, correct.
for CM. Yes.
It's not MSBA
It's not
or
MSBA.
DCAM or anything like that. It would be either the entire committee or a subset of the committee that would select a CM and bring it forward to this committee to ratify the vote.
Got it.
And so one of the pros to the DBB is it's typically less expensive, and the pro to the CM is that they're here earlier, and if it's a very challenging site in logistics, they can help kind of go through it with some of those issues and try to help the design team and this team try to figure out the best way to deliver that project.
So would you consider this project a complex phasing and logistical project? Like, it's going to be complicated?
I mean, there are multiple phases, and I think it is a very tight site. I think all of us have done significantly more complicated phasing jobs than this one. 2, 3, 4 phase jobs with occupied buildings that you're connecting to and building attachments to while the building is being occupied. I'd say this one's probably on our end more of a mid-level, where the biggest concern on that side is it's tight, and you have a school that is very close to your construction. It needs to stay active during construction. So, but we're not adding on to a building or renovating sections of the building while the rest of the building is still occupied. So, which we have done in other projects, which increases the complexity a lot.
Certainly more complicated than this building.
Yeah, it was just because,
Yeah.
yeah.
And this,
Saying one was better for a complex project
Yeah.
than the other, so I was just
Yeah.
trying to determine where this lies in your idea of complexity.
Yeah, I would say like the easiest then, if like you build a building way over there in that field out by the road, you move the students over, then you knock this one down, big separation, a lot of land, a lot of laydown space, and then on the flip side, you're knocking down a wall over there, building another section, and they're literally in the same building attached to students, which would be the most complex. So it's probably somewhere in between that.
And for the record, we were GC for this project, so.
So for the 149, like we said, the pro lowest price, so it's a competitive bid. All the contractors are bidding against each other with the hope that you're bringing in good competition and you're driving the price. They're trying to get the project. They're trying to win the project. So because of that, your debt exclusion would be 5 to 10% less because the total project value would be a decrease. Our estimates would be decreased, anticipating savings with the GC delivery method. And one of the other pros we see is that all the drawings inspect are 100% owned. Whatever you put out to bid, everything in there is owned, and there's no, the contractor can't say, I don't own that for whatever reason. There are sometimes where CMs do that to a minor level, but sometimes it's to benefit the project as well, so it's not necessarily a con on their side, but just something that, it makes it a little bit more simple. That it simplifies the construction administration, where you know that you open a page and something's on there, they own it outright. You don't have to go hunting to see if it was qualified or if it got changed in the CM procurement.
So Sean, the $176 million estimate that was provided a couple of months ago, does that envision one versus the other?
It envisions CM, so we carried the higher, what we would see as the higher cost all the way up to this point until you make a decision, because we want to make sure we're at the worst case scenario.
So that's why under this one here under GC it would say, that's why it has the bullet point that it'd be 5 to 10% less.
Yes. And just generally speaking, just cost in general would be 5 to 10% less. Our estimate is we carry 5 to 10% less for a GC project, which means when we submit to the MSBA, if it is GC, we would be submitting typically at the lower budget rate. So that, because when you vote for it, that's the number you're going to vote on. So you want to have those two aligned.
So I work at the MBTA. We do a lot of both types. With general contractors, we often find that they bid low and then try and submit change orders or try
We didn't
and get
find
more
out
money
last time
out of
they
us.
would give you.
How do we handle that in this kind of project where we're not going to be going back to the town for another vote to try and say, well, we need another $20 million?
Well, as part of our budget, we'll have contingencies built in for that. We'll have, up until the end, we'll have a design contingency, design and pricing contingency, and then there'll be a soft cost contingency and an owner's contingency to pay for extras. And we'll determine what that percentage is as we get closer towards the end of the project to see what's appropriate. So there will be a bucket of money set aside for that. Unfortunately, there's always change orders. There's always things that need to be bought out, and it's the nature of the work. So we do account for that, and that's why we carry those contingencies in there to make sure we don't have to go back to the town and ask for more money for items.
Yeah.
How does the MSBA reimbursement come into play with this 5 to 10% difference?
Their grant is capped at their grant level. They used to provide incentive for CM at risk delivery method, but they removed that percentage a couple of years ago. So now it's whatever the cost is, their grant won't change no matter which delivery method you use.
So we'd be bearing the cost?
Yes. So on 149, our cons are pre-qualification and bid protests are more common. On the trade contractor level, it's kind of par for the course, because either way, you're going out to the trade contractors in a public bid environment, and they may provide bid protests against each other. But in this one, it's the GCs. Oftentimes, they'll try to find holes in each other's bids, and they'll try to point them out and file bid protests and things like that. So there is some risk of that happening. It doesn't happen in every project, but when it happens, we deal with it. And I think the real issue with that is if you do have someone filing a court injunction, it could delay the start of the project until that's adjudicated. But we're hoping not to be there on this one. The other con is there's no involvement during the phase estimates. So we're going to use, when a CM comes in, they will provide their own estimate, where with the GC, we will have an independent estimator, and the architect will have it as well, and we'll come to terms on those numbers. Oftentimes, I think the CM can go through and maybe has a better beat on the market at that current time, and they can help get some more accurate pricing as we get closer to bid time. Again, we talked about early packages. We can do early packages with 149, but it's limited scope. We can't buy out concrete foundations or steel with the GC. We could put a roadway down to the site. We could shift the road and do things like that if we're thinking about the Roselle site, but we can't get shovels in the ground really any earlier to do foundations and steel work on a GC delivery method. And like we said before, rejection of unqualified or unresponsive contractors can delay if you decide that your low bid contractor, as the committee, is not a qualified or responsive contractor. You have the right to reject them, and we have in the past, and our rejections have held up. These committees and towns have a very strong ability to decide who is a responsive contractor. But again, if somebody files a lawsuit, you may not want to continue and start your project until that's adjudicated, because you'd be at risk for any work that went to the ground prior to that. And then just logistics defined without input from the contractor. We, with the design team, would be working through site logistics, but you would get no input from the contractor. You would put out a set of drawings and basically tell them what the logistics plan for it is. That's not to say they can't come in and give you their ideas and change it, but what they own is what would be on the drawings. Where in the CM world, they would come in and help you try to thread that needle and figure out the best method of how they would build the building. And so when the contractors come in and they're buying out logistics plans based on the CM's advice. So Chapter 149A, qualification-based selection. Again, you're not required, while there is a pro to having a competition in the bidding world, you're not required to pick any particular bidder. So if you decide that someone is going to be a better fit for West Bridgewater, you can choose them as your construction manager. So you have a little bit easier choice of picking a contractor, where unless a contractor is unresponsive at some point or there's a fault in their bid, the low bid is going to stand, and that's the contractor that's going to build the building. They're an involved partner throughout design and construction. They bring their expertise, and they can help with issues. They can try to figure out how to build stuff more efficiently, more inexpensively, and help the design team maybe look at stuff from a constructability standpoint where you don't get that benefit when you do it with the GC. They will help with design phase cost estimates, and as you go in, they may see something that's more expensive and find a better way to do it, and so you can provide some benefit that way upfront during the design. It can be less complicated to procure early packages, because they're going to be working as your CM. So if we do send out some early packages, they can buy out concrete and steel, because they're going to be the ones installing that and putting up, and they're going to own that throughout the project. The complication on the other side is we wouldn't want to buy out concrete and steel and then turn that over to a contractor, because there's way too much room for risk in that. But if the CM is the person doing the procurement, the risk is really on them to make sure that everything's coordinated correctly. So that's why you can do that early out. Also, more and more pieces of equipment and like MEP equipment and switch gears, lead times are getting longer and longer. So a CM, you can order that a little bit more easily through a CM. They take ownership of it, and so that can reduce the lead times for those sorts of items and give you a little bit more confidence in your schedule that you're going to make the times that you need to make. We don't see a lot of bid protests in the CM world. Once you pick your CM, I haven't, people might look for their presentations and things like that, but I haven't heard anyone protesting to the AG's office that they weren't a qualified CM. So there's less risk on there. If there's any buyout savings or any of their contingencies that they don't use, that all gets turned over to the district at the end of the project. So you do provide them with a contingency. That's part of that 5 to 7% increased cost, but any of that money that does not get spent during the project, you get back. And then they also build in allowances into their GMP to cover really like known unknowns. They might have a risk here, or they say, oh, well, normally we see some change orders here, and they'll build it right into their pricing, and that's, again, part of that 5 to 10%. And whatever doesn't get spent now gets turned back over to the owner. So there's less perceived change orders, because that number would already be a contract, and they don't need to receive a change order for it. It's just a budget shift from one allowance into that package that they had bought out, and that's what the money was set aside for. So that can give you a little bit more confidence to it. What is it going to cost at the end of the project? If the CM is telling you, well, here's where all your risks are, and let's put money in there now, you can have a little bit more confidence by the end of the job that you're not going to go over that GMP price. Again, the con, higher upfront cost. It's not a cost-based competitive bid, at least from the CM perspective. So they're not competing on price; they're only competing on qualifications. So if cost is the main driver, that's a con. And then sometimes the CMs will take the specifications, put qualifications on them, and often it will make contracting it and construction management of it a little bit more complicated of what was bought out, who bought it out, what package it's in, and things like that. But I think for the committee's standpoint, that's probably a non-issue. That's more of an issue from this side of the table. So just, we talked about some key factors, and we understand with any project, cost is typically right up there. So cost is a key factor in this consideration. And then the other one we want to look at is schedule. If we'll present schedules of what it looks like to have early buyout of concrete and steel, and maybe some piece of equipment, and how that would translate into cost or schedule savings. If we can cut a couple months off the project, you can save escalation on a lot of the items that you're buying, the steel, the concrete, and you may be able to save some money there and really kind of cut down on that cost premium by saving time on the project. And then the logistics as well. This is a phased project. It's close to an occupied school. You got little students there, so there may be a benefit to having the CM come in early and talk about site logistics. And again, it is a very small site. There's going to be limited laydown because that building is going to be operational, and they can usually help try to figure out how do you deliver that project with such little laydown space, and how do you manage all the subs and the trades and the pieces of equipment, sometimes better than a GC can, because they've been looking at it longer. When they get in at DD design and they've been looking at this job for a year before they execute it, it gives them a lot more time to really schedule the logistics and work it out, where a GC is going to look at it for a month, put a bid on it, and then they're going to expect it to come and put shovels in the ground.
What percentage complete are you bringing them in on as far as for your drawings?
For a CM at risk?
For CM at risk.
I would say on this project, probably after SD, like into the DD period. And I don't know if you have a...
Yeah, usually DD. We would have
Which
design
would be
development.
about 75%, 50%?
I don't think I heard the question, actually.
What percentage of your drawings, of the design are you at when you bring in the construction manager at risk?
I would say early in design development, which is the next phase.
Okay, and if a 4 is 0 and a bid would be 100, are you at 50, 75?
DD is probably about 40, 30, 40%, something like
No,
that.
it's 5 seconds after schematic design. I don't
Yeah.
know, I've never thought about it that way.
I'm just curious, how you...
Yeah.
So the phases, so maybe
early-
so we have schematic design, then we have design development phase, then we have 60% construction, 90% construction drawings, and then 100% construction.
So they have input before you even get to 60, if you go
Yes.
that route. They're
Yes.
going through that. All right.
Right.
That's, I asked it clumsily, but that's what I was trying
No,
to
no,
get
no,
at.
sorry.
I mean, so depending on the project too, some projects will bring them on at 60%, or there's often times where there's towns in districts that, for some reason or other, like construction managers. They like a certain construction manager, but it's not a heavily logistics job, and they're bringing them on because that's the delivery method they like and it's worked well for them in the past. So they may bring them on later, but I think here, as early as possible. I don't think you pay any more by bringing them on at DD versus 60%. Their involvement would be more limited during that DD period, but it would probably make sense to at least start talking about it.
I mean, we have a client now who wants to bring them on before schematic design, and we're like, well, that's early. So, it does vary, but.
And typically, you will get a fee for pre-construction from them. It's usually a set price lump sum fee that will bring, depending on the timing, if you're bringing the DD versus 60 or 90, it's usually a monthly charge or a total charge divided by month, and that's how they bill it out.
Any other questions for Sean on this?
So,
Just David, sorry.
yeah, so just so I understand the process on the general contractor, you're going to have a price before you award it.
Correct.
But on the CM, it looks like you're going to award, and then it says here you negotiate the price at a later design phase. So how does that work?
So we will have them, as part of their submission, they will submit a whole bunch of stuff, the general conditions, what it's going to cost for each phase of work. So you'll have an idea of what their fee is going to be from the construction manager's standpoint. But then they also, they have fixed fees. Their general conditions, general requirements, winter conditions for the job, based on the schedule, they'll figure all of that out. And then usually it's their fee is a percentage of construction cost. So you won't know that until you buy out all your construction if it's a multiplier on that fee.
So you'll know what the base costs are, and you'll know what the percentage cost
Yes.
is, but clearly you're not gonna know what the overall construction cost is until the end of the construction project.
Until the end, and then I would say within a certain time frame of trade contractors, we require them to lock in their GMP, their guaranteed maximum price. So at that point, anything that's not bought out, they're carrying numbers for those items. I mean, ideally, we want them to kind of buy it all out, so we have much more, better assurances. But they may decide not to buy out their landscaping because it's a year and a half down the road, and they didn't get favorable pricing. So they will hold a number for that within their GMP. If that number is bid over, we get into landscaping bids from their 3-4 contractors, whoever they go to, and it's over that, the overage comes out of their GMP contingency. And then if that gets exhausted, it comes out of their fee, and that's really what they're hedging against on the risk. So they're going to give you a number that they feel comfortable with to make sure that they don't dig into their own pockets. But we also just want to make sure, we have a strong, to your point, just a strong information of where is this project going to be at the end of it. And we normally get a GMP signed by them a month or two after trade bids are open. And typically we write in a contractual requirement that it must be signed within X amount of days of that.
And you feel comfortable, again, I know it's a dynamic market, but you feel comfortable that with all of those variables, that the quote that we have is inclusive of all of those potential estimates?
Ideally, that's the way it's set up. Yes, that's the way our process will be set up, is to make sure that we know. Well, I mean, we'll know even before. They will carry. They'll carry line items for like the trade bids. We'll have, their estimate. They'll carry those numbers as they're trying to craft their, craft the GMP and where we're at. And then as once you open the trade bids, there'll be some that are high, some that are low, and we'll reconcile all of the ups and the downs, and then we'll figure out where we're at. And whatever is left over, will go into their GMP contingency, or if it's an overage, will come out of their GMP contingency, and then they'll reevaluate where they're at each buyout in each different phase of the project.
Other questions? So again, the purpose of tonight, as I alluded to when I sent you out the draft presentation for tonight, was just to have an early discussion, put these slides out there so you and the others who couldn't be here tonight can at least have a look at it. We can be thinking about it. Obviously, if you have questions over these next couple of months, bring them up. Even if it specifically isn't on the agenda, perhaps we can still bring it up as part of a discussion if you have questions. It's an important decision for us, and like tonight, we're missing a handful of members. Obviously, we still have a quorum. We wouldn't be meeting if we didn't have a quorum, but I expect that we're going to be missing a handful of members at every meeting over the summer. It's just the natural tendency with summer vacations. So I don't intend to bring this to a vote until the September 9th meeting. The schedule calls for the schematic design to go to the cost estimators on September 9th, but they're not going to lose anything by not knowing what our vote is until that evening, and then we can inform them what it is the next day so they can start the process of working in those numbers to their calculations. So September 9th would be the meeting where this would be on the agenda to make a vote.
I would say we could probably answer most of your questions off the top of our heads between the design team and us, but if there are specific questions, if you let us know ahead of time, we can certainly prepare a slide or just dig in and get some more information so we can be very accurate and specific to answer any questions you have on it.
Okay? Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
Lori?
Okay, so on June 10th, I guess it was, we had a sustainability workshop, and the goal was to sort of talk in big picture about what sustainability means to us as a firm. It's very important to us, but we design sustainability. I think you've all heard the stats, construction and buildings cost a lot of the global warming, et cetera, on this planet. It uses a lot of the resources on this planet, and we want to make sure we're being good stewards with what we do. But also, on the flip side, you're occupying the building, and you want it to be a positive, healthful building for the occupants. So all of these things are important factors. We literally look at where is that product being made, how is it being made, what is it being made from, how's it being shipped. All of these things are really important components of the building industry. So here are sort of our 5 focus areas. And again, this is, work that we care deeply about. All the images on here are our projects. It's what we do. So thinking about, on the left, resources and economy, energy and integration. I think a lot of people immediately think about energy and how's the building operating and what are my utility bills. That's a factor. Equitable communities and well-being, which may sound a little bit soft and crunchy, but it's still, this is a public building. We want it to be welcoming. Water usage and ecosystems of the both the building itself, the environments it's in, and then change and discovery of how one is experiencing the building. So we covered all of these topics in detail. We do actually have some meeting minutes that will say a lot more than what I'm going to try to hit on tonight to share out with you all. I think we'll probably send it out as a PDF tomorrow. But a couple bullets here that we've added were just topics that really came up and resonated with the group that was with us for this meeting. Mechanical systems is always a hot topic because it's one of those things that when the building opens, everyone talks about and knows, is it warm, is it cold, how does it feel in here, all of these kinds of things. So really, we talked a lot about air infiltration in your mechanical systems so that the air that's in the space is like fresh outdoor air indoors, and that really has an impact on how the occupants feel in the space. And then we talked a lot about the school as a community resource. That yes, of course, first and foremost, it's an elementary school, but how it can be used after hours and weekends and things like that, and really how it becomes a welcoming resource for the community. We got an interesting conversation about, again, where is the material coming from and what's actually possible to be coming from as close nearby as we can, and how that could make a difference in terms of, again, length of travel and things like that for the material. It was mentioned that brick manufacturers are actually quite nearby. And then we talked a lot about the site and its uses, community gardens, both for the school use, and then of course, school lets out, summer comes, whatever you've just planted will be burned out if no one takes care of it, and how do you bring the public in to really make it a resource for the community and for the neighborhood.
So on that note, who does take care of it?
Community gardens. Well, during the school year, it's supposed to be programming with the school. So right now, what we're talking about is having a set for the lower school and a set for the upper school, that the students can come out within school schedule time to do that. But like I said, sort of then you get into the summer months and things like that, and how that might be handled. We talked a little bit about the War Memorial Park and how that is maintained, and just so we'll do some more greater research of what might be possible for the site. It's a beautiful site, so it definitely wants to be a resource for the community. I think.
Currently, there's gardens at 2 of the schools, or 3 of the schools now, and we have volunteers from I think it's the high school garden club that are meeting with some Anne Marie Grinder, and they're taking care of the gardens over the summer.
Good. So water and ecosystems. So again, conservation of water, rainwater collection and retention on the site will be all part of mitigating what's happening with the water on this site. We talked a little bit about rooftop gardens and the ability for them to sort of also retain water before it flows into the system, and the ability of gardens, both whether they're on the rooftop or at grade, are sort of a great educational opportunity. And then we were lucky enough to have Director of Food Service with us and talking a lot about food waste and how to manage that, and what space and equipment is needed, what operational steps that are needed, and again, sort of a great opportunity for the youngest among us to sort of be aware of these things. Yes, they're doing it at home, but really, mom and dad are doing it at home, right? And they're not really. So sort of bringing that as also an educational tool for the kids was talked a lot about. And then discovery and change. So really thinking about, again, how do you make a building, for today and tomorrow? And this idea of, or sort of already have it built into our space program, having these variety of sizes of spaces for the flexibility and the future of learning. So they're not all, we all went to school with a double loaded corridor in the same size classroom on either side of the corridor, and that was that. But what we're designing is rooms with smaller groups for 4 and 6 kids, multi-purpose rooms for different size groups of kids coming in, and these different ways of using the building in the future to support the future of learning. We talked a lot about flexibility in terms of the space itself, and the quote, which I forget who Mark said it's from, but educate our students for the future, not our past, was a lot of the conversation as well. I think that's my last one, yeah? Nope, one more. Energy efficiency, my favorite topic. So EUI, if you haven't heard that term, if you spent any time with Stephanie, which by the way, both Stephanie and James dared to take vacation on the same week, so that's why they're not here. I don't know how that happened. Energy use intensity is a formula, it's a factor of how well your building is operating. And it's actually a factor that the lower the number of energy use intensity, the better the building is doing. We design buildings for quite low in the 24, 25 range, which again, we'll get into a lot of details about that. But again, with the core group of people that were talking with us, it's not just about that, right? There's multiple factors. And so it's operational costs, in terms of utilities and things like that, but it's also in terms of the maintenance of the building, the material you have in there, the longevity of the material, the cost to maintain it. And we are having, I know those of us that are part of the subcommittee on a subgroup on sustainability we'll be having a lot of conversations about upfront costs versus long-term costs of operation of the system that we decide on. And then that gets into the whole world of embodied carbon, which I am not the one that's going to give you a 101 on embodied carbon. But all of these things are factors that we think a lot about when we're designing the building. So, and we will be having a second charrette with everybody, as well as continuing to meet with the working group on the matter. So, and that's that.
Any questions on that?
Any thoughts? Yeah? Yeah.
And you just popped into my head when you were mentioning how, we all went with 30 kids in the room every side, and this is all smaller spaces. And what you would anticipate us needing to increase staff in the school for the same number of kids that would, like, compared to the schools they're in now?
All right, Mark's not here tonight. It's really it's really an administrative question that needs to be dealt with, and staffing, yes. There's some aspects of it that we have to deal with related to spaces and so forth, but overall staffing operationally of the new school.
No, I was just going more towards that one bit about the, as you're making it out, do they anticipate something?
One of the main things we talked a lot about in our space program is the concept of having 2 classrooms with an adjacent small group room that connects to both of them. And so that doesn't necessarily require another teacher because there's glass between the spaces and they can send 2 or 3 kids to work on a project in that room. Conversely, there's a lot of conversation about the specialists, which will come to and pull out 1 or 2 kids, work on something within that space. So these are professionals that are throughout the building, but they'll use these variety of spaces to meet with kids either one-on-one or in smaller groups. So, again, it just gives that flexibility where before it was like, you're either in a classroom or you're in somebody's office, and those were your only options in school. And if you were in an office, you're probably in trouble.
Where our current schools are kind of running out of space, it was always in the corner.
Right, so right now we have 3 teachers that are pulling kids to one room. So there's 3 different groups going on with just like cardboard separating them. So instead of having all these kids in one room, they could each have kind of separate spaces, still the same number of staff, but just having more room to themselves, because we're just shoving multiple kids and multiple adults in one little room.
Does that help with what you were looking for?
That was helpful. Like I said, what hadn't even thought about it before, just popped into my head when you mentioned the difference. So.
It's a horrible terminology, which you may or may not. Cells and bells is what they used to call buildings that those of us went to school in once upon a time, because that's all they were. So it's changed a lot. It's changed a lot in the last 50 years. Okay, great. So I'm going to turn it over to Melissa.
So we've been looking at kind of working on the footprint of the building as it relates to the site. So this is just a diagram, and you can see the dashed line here, and it kind of steps in and goes around. So we're trying to, there's a lot of shared spaces, and at the original, thought process of that is that they'd all be on the first floor. And we're finding that, the site is very tight, and it's kind of challenging to fit them all graciously on the first floor. They're getting rather cramped, and they're all like on top of each other, and it's not gonna, I think, fit very well. So we're working really hard to think about ways to fit a little more maybe on the second floor and make that be part of the public space and bring the students up there. So this is sort of a revised footprint looking at that, which is starting to get there. And we're gonna keep working on that as we go. But the big change to the plans now you'll see, 12 was where for a little while we had the gym, and now 12 is receiving a mechanical again. So it had been there. We believe that this is going to be the edge where the loading will be easiest to accommodate on the site, and take it away from this end. And this allows all of the kitchen and cafeteria space to kind of take up the rest of the first floor in the central shared portion of the building. And then continue with the administrative and the medical flanking the main entry point here. We're able to provide another smaller entry back here, which could accommodate if there was any need for drop off from either buses or parents on the backside. That sort of dual entry zone can be accommodated through this larger upper cafeteria here. And so that allows a little more flexibility in the planning of the building. It's not all only from the front. You have another way in the back, which comes into a shared space, which is easily supervised by the people that are already at the front door. Another benefit, you'll see this did allow, this hallway had gotten a little tight in our previous iterations. This allows a little more graciousness through this main center spine, so that when you're coming along, it feels comfortable to be navigating the number of students that might be coming in the day and getting to their different wings. And then, the bulk of the educational wings are relatively unchanged from the last time you've seen them. So that's not the focus. We've been really trying to maximize and get the benefit out of this area.
And we did talk to the educators about this.
Yes, yes. We previously met with them just to be like, is this a deal breaker to put the gym up? Nobody said that it was, so we kept studying it. So you can see here now, the gym could be right above the mechanical and receiving and loading area, and then a number of the multi-purpose space that could have sort of a proximity to this space, as well as the media. So all of these public spaces could be accessed, this large open stair that's part of this, central spine, for lack of a better term, to get up to these public spaces as well. And the educational wings could have doorways and closures, so that in the evening or after hours when it's a public use only, these are areas that the public can get to and they're not wandering through the halls and going into classrooms or, what have you. So that, I think, is the biggest change in the plan. And then the third floor is more or less the same. And then we have a few views that we put together of what this kind of looks like. So this is kind of a view, you're in that main hallway. These are the cafeteria, this is the lower cap, this is sort of the kitchen wall, and that's sort of the service wall there. And this is the administration on this side, and you're seeing down to the end of this space a large open stair, holes in the floor above, and bridges into the media, so that you can see up to where the gym and the media are, or the library, so you know where you are. And it's also, this move allowed us to get some window at the end of this hallway, so it's not just all enclosed. There's actually, some view beyond, because there's a real focus and interest on this connection to nature, and this sort of allowed that as well. And then this is a view from the second level of that same area, seeing in the bridges that are leading to the library potentially, and the community room, and then sort of down the gym entrances over to the side here. And this is some of the windows that could be into the OTPT spaces or the multipurpose room, so that everything in this space is, it has windows and view, and so when you're walking along this hallway, it's very interesting and exciting part of the progression through the building. And then the last view is the idea, in this, right now, we were thinking potentially, and we did talk to the educators about this too, perhaps the upper cafeteria would not be a fully enclosed space, so it would be connected into this spine. So when you come into the building, you can see right through it and right out. You can see the performance stage area and sort of the second means of entrance here that could bring you from the back of the building into this zone as well. So it's all very connected and continuous.
So similar to what we have in this building that you're...
Similar idea.
Yeah.
So the cafeteria being open, not a wall within the building to the corridor. And so it's open, it makes the lobby, like kind of extends it and gives it a lot of grace, a lot of space to, if you did have a gathering or people coming, you can kind of mill in. It's not like pinching through the doors, you're there. So that we've done that in a lot of schools, and it's a nice way of kind of getting double duty out of the cafeteria space, because it's kind of becoming part of your lobby space. So that's sort of the interior stuff, and then I have some slides about pretty images of how these things can look in the end.
Donna.
Go ahead.
Yeah, can you just remind me the upper versus lower? Was that the age range of the kids that would use each one?
So the upper cafeteria is serving the third grade and up, and the lower cafeteria is K1 and 2.
Okay.
And so they wanted to divvy that up to be able to do two groups at once, but not have them commingled in a fifth graders and kindergartners.
David?
Yeah, so I know some of this is evolving, but I don't think we've seen a slide yet that delineates square footage by classification. So I'm just wondering if we are able to do that at a future date. For example, how much is dedicated to library, how much is dedicated to classroom space? how
Well, the
much to
space,
library,
the
that type
space
of stuff.
summaries that we've had, we're happy to show it again.
Yeah.
And it has obviously evolved because we dropped the district and we dropped the preschool, so happy to share that.
Yeah, we can bring that
There was
next
a
time.
presentation that did have that early on,
It
but
had broken down by each one?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
a big
But yeah,
Excel
but-
sheet with every classroom and the totals of each kind of classroom space. and things like that.
But it has evolved.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I was actually just working on it today, so,
And again, the total is smaller from where we started too, right? Mark?
yeah.
And I will say these plans are matching as closely as we can at an early stage to those numbers. They will evolve and tighten up.
On the first floor, you have receiving and mechanical as a shared room 12?
It's not.
Just
It's
a square footage
zone.
block.
Okay. I was
Yeah.
just
No,
inquiring
there
what-
will
what
be
you're considering
walls.
Mechanical.
There will
Is
be
that like
walls.
boiler rooms? There'll be walls?
Yeah, there'll be
Okay.
walls, there'll be
Yeah.
separated zones. It's not one big space. It's just
So you'll
for
have
the,
your main electric and emergency electric will be there, your receiving area,
And
your
delivery
storage
drivers will not have
rooms.
access to those rooms?
Right, correct, exactly.
No Cleaver Brooks boiler
I
though.
mean, in some respects, we just kind of refer to it as the back of house, but right now, it's a volume of square footage that we're holding
and we are getting numbers from our mechanical and electrical and other trades about what the rough square footages are. And I think that box is gonna be able to contain all of the program that's in for custodial and receiving, as well as what they are gonna need. So I think we're in good shape with that size, and we were not as much in good shape when the gym was on this floor as well. So that's another driver for this, to make sure that we're not shortchanging custodial and maintenance and all the important spaces that help the building run, but also the mechanical and electrical that help the building run in a very different way. So we want to make sure we're able to provide that. But yeah, you can see the admin, we were laying out every little room. Haven't done that in that space yet, but we will.
Just had another question about the cafeteria space. Was any conversation had with just having multiple shifts at one cafeteria for the
There will
different age
be
groups?
still multiple shifts, because if you're feeding 7 grades,
Maybe 7 here, it's, okay.
so we were thinking so there would be, say, K is eating first, and then maybe third grade's eating. And then halfway through, first grade comes in, and then fifth grade comes in. So
Okay.
they'll be staggered in each one, so I imagine probably 3 shifts at
Okay.
least in each cafeteria.
And we definitely would need 2? We couldn't make it more.
I don't think, because if it was all one, I think time-wise, we'd be feeding kids all day.
Okay,
We wouldn't have enough time, you have to give them 30 minutes to eat.
okay. It just
And
seems like.
also, one of the schools, I keep forgetting which school that we saw, did have this concept, and one of the things I think people really resonated with was that if you have an 8,000 square foot cafeteria and your kindergartners walking into it, they're like, and they're so distracted, they don't eat, they're in this giant space and everything. And this idea to have a slightly smaller version to match the younger students in scale really resonated with those that
And I
saw
think
them.
even the furniture, so like a kindergartner is sitting in much different seating than a sixth grader is.
Right,
So we
right.
would have to delineate that as well.
Okay, thank you.
And the square footage is the same, I think, they could be combined, but it's
Total.
just
Oh, I see.
separated
Yeah, it's the
in this
same
way.
total.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So nothing's getting smaller per se, it's just sort of divided.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
sure.
Just a question in case anybody else is thinking this, and not necessarily just in this room, but watching as well. So there's no design standard out there or other train of thought or standard industry practice that says the gym should always be on the first floor.
No, we often have our
I'm
gyms
a little
on the
bit
second floor.
shell-shocked about the misconceptions about the orientation of our football field on this project. So I don't want to go through this again with the gym, where the gym should be only on the first floor and never on the second floor.
We've done it on the second floor on a lot of our projects, and it's very successful. And as long as the stair that leads up to it is very welcoming and you can find it, that's when it would be a problem. I think when the community's like, where is it when they get in the building? But those views we were putting together, they're very early, but I think you can see that there'll be view to it in some way. There'll be signage as well that will help direct people up these stairs down there. That's the gym, and so it will be very straightforward, both visually and signage wise and wayfinding wise. And we've done it on a number of schools with much more sensitive, acoustically required programming underneath it, and that works fine too. Mechanical spaces are obviously not your prime acoustic separation issues, so we're okay. But I think we've done it with program that's a lot more sensitive underneath.
Okay. Other questions?
I was going to bring that up, Gary, because I remember one of the big things that was promoted with this school is that you don't have the public going through all the corridors because the the gym and the auditorium is right, off the main
Right.
entrance. So
Yeah.
it is a little bit shifted thinking to think about it, the gym being upstairs, but
But
the
it's
idea
still
is
in the main-
central.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's still in
Yeah.
the central area of the building.
It's
They're
still
not
in
gonna-
it's kind of like here you come up to the library and you come up the stairs and you're in the library. It's very similar to that. It's just
The
the gym is
library
up,
and
which
the
is, I know, often the gym, the first thought is first floor, but a lot of times it's a very large programmatic space, and when you put everything that's large on the first floor, you end up with a bit of a sprawl.
Right.
And we're trying to compress the building, in a conscious way to make it very workable and usable, but also fitting on the site nicely, because there's a lot of elements on the site that are existing building and all of that we're working around, so we don't want to, create problems that way. So I think this is a good way of doing it, and, as long as the educators were okay with it, which they were, I think that's the major challenge, and then once it's up there and everyone's used to it, everyone in West Bridgewater will be like, oh, of course a gym can go on the second floor, that's natural.
All right, good.
So I will just run through, we have some diagrams we put together. We just wanted to talk about the locations of the stairs as they're coming together, and also the elevator. I know people have been asking here and there, where is the elevator and how is that going? So the elevator is, you've come in the front door right here. It's right there next to the upper cafeteria. It is hedged over to the side that's 3 stories, obviously, so that it can get to all 3 floors. Efficiently and effectively, but it's also quite near the main entrance, which I think is important for visitors who need that resource. And then stairs, we have 2 that will be fully enclosed, that'll go up the 3 stories that serve for the either end of the upper school here. And then there's going to be a stair here within the gym that has direct access out, which could also potentially be a way for the public to access the gym after hours, if that's something the school wants to consider. And then there's 2 sets of stairs at the end of the lower school, and those are, because it's a 2-story wing and we can fire separate the 3-story wing, they can be open, and that is, a nice way of actually, they're quieter when they're open, contra to what you would think. When they're open to the hallway, kids behave better and they're like, oh, I'm still in the hall, but when they get in an enclosed stair, they're like, "Rah!" So it's actually a nice way to, it saves money on walls and doors, and it also is looks very nice and is calming for the students, or more quiet. And they're also like the little ones, and the doors are heavy, and, you know, everything's awkward, so it makes it a lot easier. So that's the layout of the stairs and elevator, and then bathrooms. We're doing a thing where we're trying to get the most efficiency out of our bathroom blocks, so we're putting them as close as we can to the center zone, and we are putting them before the closure off of the hallway. So this block here will serve this floor for students during the day, and then in the evening, it can also be shared with the public. Same with this block here, which this one, because the kindergartens has their own, will probably be very dedicated for public use, but it will also obviously be available for students, and certainly if a kid is in the cafeteria during lunch hour and needs to use the bathroom, that would probably be the one they'd run to. And then on the second floor, they're stacked, so that's, you know, as efficient as you can be as far as toilets go. It's happening in the same zone, so the second grade will use this block, the third grade would use this block, and the fifth grade would use that block. But these two are, again, accessible from the gym and the media and the other spaces here that, you know, this is multi-purpose, so that could potentially be a community use as well. And then on the third floor, there's just an additional set for the sixth grade to use. So we wanted to get the most use out of them and not make as many toilets as we could. And some are public and some are only for students, because that's not as efficient, and that's expensive square footage, so. And then we also are noting little red boxes on the classrooms that have dedicated bathrooms as part of them. A lot of the special education do, as well as the kindergarten. And then the offices have some as well, in the nurses' suite.
What about educational staff? What bathrooms do they use?
So part of these blocks has a staff bathroom in each one. And then there's also the possibility of potentially a gender-neutral bathroom, if that's something, or there could be two staff, either way. So they are outfitted for adult use or adult height fixtures, because I don't know if you know, but fixtures come in a lot of different heights, and the little ones are very, 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 very small. And I think none of us would want to use them, so, you know, we reserve those for kindergarten, and then the rest are sort of larger, easier for anybody to use. So,
I'm having trouble with your stair over in the corner by the gym. Now you're moving the gym up to the second floor.
yep,
That's that's all gonna be mechanical rooms and receiving,
Behind.
loading dock, or behind, but now if you're taking up a third of the building coming in, so that you're coming down the stairs, that's not exterior, that's cut in and out of that space. You're cutting out probably a third of the building for
here?
where the trucks are coming in. They're gonna back in, they need to have the docks. There's not gonna be an entrance into the building, because you don't want the kids going down from the gym and going into the mechanical rooms. Right, so is that just gonna basically be an emergency exit to come
The
down from the gym?
stairs, yes, and we could put a vestibule on it and have it be, but it's only leading into the gym. So that's the only place that stair
So
is
it's the
going.
gym or outside?
Yeah,
Is it basically
Yes,
for?
yes, it doesn't go back into the building
Okay,
at
just
that point.
emergency egress?
right. It's not a connection from the gym to like the mechanical or the custodial. That wouldn't,
'cause before
I mean,
it was the
maybe it
gym.
would be convenient, but probably not. So.
No, but when you showed it before with the stairway on the outside, it was, well, fine, there's a classroom, there's regular school space, and then the gym up above the gym. So
Yeah.
they go into the gym, and then they go up into the
Yeah.
program space, where this is more,
That stair, I believe, probably will not be used very much, but we need it for the purposes of an emergency egress, because once you've got a gym on the floor, you need more than one way out, because it's a larger space. So we need it for the purposes of egress. It can be a pretty simple stair. It doesn't need to be, you know, elegant and elaborate. The one in the spine here, I think, would be sort of a showpiece stair, as you will. And I have some images of
oh,
what,
yeah, the
what
one you
those
had
look like.
before was like a glass enclosed stairway, I think was the one that was
Yeah, yeah.
being shown for something like that.
Yeah, in this view, I was showing it actually, a lot of glass railings, but the walls on the stair were actually like drywall or tile or something. I just happen to like when the stair has solid edges and it's a form, but you know, it can be glass, it could be anything. Yeah. And you know, we're showing all glass rails. Obviously, there'd be some reduction in that. We're being a little simplistic this early on and being like, oh, there could be glassiness and openness. So we will refine that and be judicious in the use of fancier materials like that. Any other thoughts on this, or I think it's probably good. So I'll just show you some of the other elements. These are images from our projects, different uses of ideas we're trying to bring into this project so you can see them. So one of the ideas is daylighting and doing that by using light wells in a lot of spaces. So these are all multi-story connectors that have skylights at the top and glass windows into the center of them. And so they bring the daylight into interior spaces in these different rooms. And this is a shot up into one in the middle, actually this one. So you can see, in this case, this one had a very large skylight and then a lot of windows all around it, and that was bringing that daylight into the building, into an area where otherwise there would be no daylight or view. So that is a nice use of that, and we're looking at using that especially in the extended learning common areas.
Is there a concern, I mean, the glass is fantastic, but is there a concern at all about long-term maintenance and cleanliness of the glass?
A lot of these are, some of them are low, but these ones are all counter height or above, pretty much, or this one has a 18-inch sill. They do have to be cleaned. I think the inner side where you can't stand doesn't really get dirty ever. So yes, you do have to clean them a little bit, but I think, glass is easy to clean at least. It doesn't hold marks, or you can even write with markers on them and wipe that right off too usually. So it is a more durable, and when they're above to below like that, where if the glass broke, it could be dangerous, we use laminated glass so that it's safe, so that if it ever did get cracked, no one's gonna fall through and hurt themselves.
Yeah.
But we've had a lot of success with this and not had a lot of complaints from users. This is the idea of learning commons. So we're, in each of the educational wings, we're going to have these hallway spaces that are also zones designed for learning outside of the classroom, and so maybe some skylights integrated into those. This one is two above each other, and then obviously the glass would right to the floor in this case. We often do this frosting on the glass so that at least you can see it and people don't walk into it. This is sort of just at the end of a hallway idea of one. And then this is sort of like a niche off of a hallway idea of one. So there's a lot of different ways of creating these extended learning commons within a school. And so just some images of how that looks or can look. And then connection to nature, the site is beautifully treed and lovely. And so we want to make sure that all of our spaces are thinking about framing views and creating physical connections, either by large openings that can be open to the outside, or just, quite a good amount of glass in certain areas with doorways. And then, this is an example, obviously, of a very nice roof garden. This is in Boston, so if they didn't have this, they'd have no outdoor space. So in this case, it was an important feature of that school. And then small group rooms, I know we were talking about these a little bit earlier. So this is kind of a few of what they look like. So there's a lot of windows that go into the classrooms, like Lori was saying, so that they are small spaces where you can pull out and have a few students or a few students at a teacher meeting, and then there's supervision from the classes on either side and the teachers there. And then monumental stairs. So these are like the major stairs that we're thinking about having in the spine space up to the gym. There's a number of ways these can be constructed or look. They can have mesh rails, they can have solid, here is like a wood rail. This is just drywall with tile on the inside. The stairs can be perforated so that you can sort of see through them, which is nice, or they can also have glass rails. So there's a lot of ways to study and look at that and create a nice stairway that's really welcoming and draws you up to the gym and the library. And then some materials that we're probably thinking about using, which are tiles. So in this case, there's red tile, green tile. So you can use it as a solid color. You can create sort of beautiful graphics with the tile. Here you see. Or you can sort of do little features in zones, and then the rest can be kind of neutral and simple. So there's a lot of ways of looking at tile, and we use that a lot in the public hallways to protect the walls and keep them from getting worn down. Drywall can get scuffed pretty easily, and if you have some tile there, that takes a lot more abuse and a lot longer. Wood wall panels in some of the major spaces, in the public common areas or important spaces, we like to use some wood, which brings that connection to nature through materials, but it also creates a nice look and a warm kind of warmth to the space that otherwise maybe all tile or drywall wouldn't provide. Linoleum floors, you can, have quite clean floors with little moments of color. You can do amazing patterns. You can do maps, simple shapes. So there's a lot of variety of what you can do with linoleum, and that's a product we use in a lot of our schools. It's very easy to clean and maintain. And then baffles, felt baffles. A lot of times in these learning areas, these are both examples of learning commons. We'll utilize these felt baffles. They're acoustically very strong, but then they also create a lot more feeling of height and air in the space because you can see up and higher in there, and then also moments of color for help with wayfinding and also just like creating different special zones outside the classrooms. And then I think this is the last slide. So often we use vinyl graphics or other materials. This one's actually a stretch wall, so this one's acoustic as well. But these are from the Vail School, and so images of Annie the Hedgehog living her life and happening around the school. That was their mascot, and so that was, and they also were connected to a woodland environment, so they wanted different areas of the New England environment represented throughout the school, and it creates kind of a fun moment in each of these hallways, but also, is quite durable and lasts pretty well. And that's all the materials.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Great.
Sure.
John?
All right, so just another update on where we're at with budget. We're within, right where we thought we were going to be with our budgets. We're on track. MSBA reimbursements, the last one we put in was at the end of May. That has been paid. It was paid on June 2nd. Our total payment today from the MSBA is about $358,000, and that's on track to what we expected to be paid from them. There's been no ineligible project costs to date. So everything we submitted, they paid full grant on. Oh, and then schedule, I'm sorry. So schedule, our big, we're gonna have a lot of meetings coming up, we'll talk about that. Our big submissions are in that early September where the SD drawings go to estimators, and then we are submitting to the MSBA in October. And then, so next meetings, we got one scheduled for 2 weeks from today, then 2 weeks after that, and then looks like 2 weeks after that.
Yeah, and then there's another one. So it's basically both second and fourth Tuesdays of July and August. And again, I'll make a plea that obviously, like tonight, we're down a few. If you know you can't make it, and it's understandable if you can, obviously, just let Mark and myself know, just so we can get a sense that we're going to be able to maintain a quorum. There won't necessarily be a lot of decisions over these meetings, but as each meeting goes on, there will be a point where decisions will have to be made rather than just showing you what ifs. So that'll increase as time goes on. But the big issues like the contractor type, I will defer to till September, and we're going to have to do a lot of heavy lifting and decisions those couple of meetings in September leading up to the October submission. So again, just a heads up over the summer, particularly if you're not going to be able to make a meeting, I'd really appreciate it. Anything else that any of the members need to bring to the committee? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Don't move.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you very much, appreciate it.